Depression is remembered as a time of extreme economic hardship, which is why I was surprised when I found this on Not Twitter. It says the median annual pay during the Great Depression was 22% of the cost of an average home, and today it's 14%, which means that it's harder to buy a house today than it was during the Great Depression. And I checked this out. These are all just the first numbers off Google, and you can see that backs up the claim. Now, knowing that most of us are going to need to find a house and find a job, it's important for us to investigate this issue. And the minimum wage in Wisconsin needs to be raised. Now, I've spent the better part of the past 2 weeks researching the minimum wage and its impacts. And today I'll be covering what the problem is, why raising the minimum wage is the solution, and what we can do about it. So first up, what's the problem? And to answer this, we're going to need to answer what is a minimum wage and what is a living wage. Now, the minimum wage is the amount that an employer has to pay you legally, the minimum amount that they can. In Wisconsin, that's $7.25 an hour, and it's been that way since 2008. And a living wage is the minimum amount you need in order to maintain a decent standard of living. And according to an article from PBS Wisconsin, that's going to be around $16 an hour. And the issue is when you consider that the minimum wage is less than half that of the living wage. Additionally, the cost of living is always increasing, as evidenced by this CPI graph, and rent is also becoming more expensive, as is this graphic from the CNBC. You can see that in Wisconsin you would need to make $20 to $25 an hour in order to afford a 2-bedroom rental. And so the issue is essentially that people are not making enough money. So what's the solution? We're going to raise the minimum wage. This will, in an article from Investopedia, they say that over 23 million workers will be impacted directly if the minimum wage is raised. These are going to be those people working these low-wage jobs, maybe working 2 to 3 jobs to make ends meet even. And it's really going to help them out, take a lot of weight off their shoulders. And additionally, something people don't think about is that it could lead to an increase in employee morale, because people tend to be happier when you pay them more. So that might translate to an increase in productivity, which employers would like. Another benefit is that it would boost the economy. When people have more money, they tend to spend that money. And so most of that extra money you're going to end up paying them is going to make its way back into the economy. Now, opponents of raising the minimum wage will say, well, won't that lead to an increase in inflation? And in a study done by the W. Upjohn Institute for Employment Research, they found that inflation would increase by 0.36% for every 10% increase in wage. And so what I think people are really saying when they say it will lead to an increase in inflation is they're talking about, as the cost of labor increases, then the amount they will need to charge for their goods and services will increase, effectively canceling each other out. However, in this same study, they found that small increases in wages will actually lead to a reduction in prices. Another argument opponents have is that there's the potential for job loss. In that Investopedia article, they estimated that people would lose 1.6 million jobs. However, when compared to the 23+ million people that would benefit from this, I find it's not a really significant enough number to, to account for that, like to offset that really. And it's also my belief that if a business cannot afford to pay their workers enough, like to pay them a living wage essentially, then they shouldn't be in business. And so the argument for this is effectively that these businesses cannot afford to pay their employees enough, right, if we raise the minimum wage. However, in this chart from the Economic Policy Institute, you can see that productivity has always been increasing And yet since 1973, the hourly compensation or the wages that people are getting is mainly flatlining in comparison. And so this essentially means that these businesses do have enough money to pay their employees more, but they're just choosing not to. And so what can we do about this, right? I have two solutions. The first one is that we go to the voting booth and we vote in people that have our same beliefs and hope that something gets done legally. Or if we want to take matters into our own hands, we can go back to collective bargaining. And that's going to be your strikes and your unions, et cetera. In this chart, also from the Economic Policy Institute, you can see that as union membership is decreasing, the share of the money going to the top 10% is increasing. It's almost a mirror image even. So if more of us start to unionize, that some of that money is going to start coming back to us, the hardworking, people that really need the money, rather than the top 10%. Alone we beg, united we bargain. These businesses, these employers won't listen to us as individuals, but if they team up, or if we team up, then they have to listen to us. So the minimum wage in Wisconsin needs to be raised. We went over what the problem is, why raising the minimum wage is the solution, and what we can do about it. You can help the cause by, in the voting booth, joining a union, or just remembering what you're worth when applying for a job. It doesn't have to be much right away, but a step in the right direction can lead to better lives for ourselves and generations to come.